Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway, second show of the day to reflect on what the two head coaches of K-State's football and basketball programs had to say on Monday. Chris Klieman spoke at his usual time, and then Jerome Tang followed him up about an hour and a half, 2 hours later to discuss what's going on with basketball. Got three clips from both coaches that I think are significant in what they said. That illustrate what's going on, what to expect from them. And Drew and I will kind of go off of things from there. Of course, we have to start with K-State football, Drew. As we know, they are 1-3. That's not a good record through 4 games, especially when you consider the fact that they've only played one good team in those 4 games. I know. Sorry, Arizona fans. I do, in fact, think your team sucks, which means I also am saying that I think my alma mater sucks more than your team. That is not me. Like I still don't get the logic of Arizona fans. They were mad that I just insinuated that. I don't know. You can be a bad team that wins football games. K-State beat Cincinnati last year. Didn't make K-State better than a lot of teams, but it made them better than Cincinnati. Congrats, I guess. We saw how the rest of November went for them. What do you make of where K-State sits right now, coming off of the bye week, Drew, and getting ready to face UCF, a team that, I also don't think or didn't think was very good. But here they kind of sit at this point in time and are in a position where they're 3-0, and they handled North Carolina, which UNC is not good, but I didn't expect that.
I still don't think UCF is very good. Like beating North Carolina in 2025 for me does nothing for you. Like, congrats, you beat. I know that they've won 2 games, but they might be worse than UCLA. It's close. If you watch how organized North Carolina is compared to like a UCLA, I think North Carolina is probably worse than UCLA is. So like, I don't really take a lot of stock into that. I do opponent players to watch for every game for UCF. It's very fascinating that they've even won the first 3 games. Statistically, like, they're kind of all over the place. They've already played 3 quarterbacks. They've already had 2 starting quarterbacks. Taven Jackson, though, I think is probably the starter for the foreseeable future because he's probably the best that they have. Their run game, their number 1 player in carries is only number 1 because he got a lot of carries and mop-up time against North Carolina A&T. The receivers are just okay. The defense doesn't really do anything that, like, it is crazy. They don't have a lot of tackles for a loss. They don't have a lot of sacks. They don't turn you over a bunch. It's a very fascinating team to look at, and you say, this team is 3-0. Huh. But what they do, and unironically, I had UCF North Carolina on for about 3 quarters on Saturday before I went back and like watched the end against North Carolina on yesterday. They do play very hard, and like that is one thing that they do well. Scott Frost has now won like I think 16 games in a row at UCF, so he's got that going for him. I don't really know what K-State is going to be post-bye week or really the rest of the season. I think that anything has kind of gone out the window already. But what concerns you is that like this is a game again where we talked about the last 4 games, that if you play hard, you should probably beat UCF. But I don't know if they're going to play hard is the issue.
Yeah, that's the thing where K-State sits right now. Is I still don't doubt the talent fully on this team. At least they had more talent than the last 3 teams they played and played poorly against and should have lost all 3. The North Dakota game still feels like a loss. Like
they have more talent than UCF does.
Yeah, like they shouldn't have played the way that they did in the last 3 games, even if this was not a good team, and they're not. Like, they still have no excuse. Like, they should be we should be having to trick ourselves into right now thinking that this team is still good at 3-1, as opposed to confronting and discussing the fact that this team is clearly bad at 1-3. And it's hard to talk about it because you can't, like, yes, sir, things are not doing well on the field, but they're not doing them well because I don't think it's because they're talentless or they're bad. It's just that they're not coming through. And Chris Klieman talked a little bit about that yesterday, and not seeing his team really fight back.
Part of that is accurate. Some of it is just getting punched in the mouth and fighting back, rather than, okay, I'm just getting punched in the mouth. I think that's collectively. I think that's our team. Some of it is our coaches getting punched in the mouth as far as, boy, that didn't work. Okay, now we've got to find something else, and we got to get these kids believing in what we're doing is the right thing, and getting them playing with their hair on fire. And that hasn't happened yet on either side consistently. It's happened a series. It's happened for a quarter or so, but it's got to happen for 4 quarters.
The tough part about that is I just find it really hard that, Chris Klieman is waiting for that to happen from his team, where, like, he's certainly communicated that, hey, you got to do this. It should be instinct to want to fight back and get after it and try to prove everybody wrong. But this team does feel almost content to just kind of shying away from it and going, well, tough stuff, I guess. We're not going to get it done. And that level of disinterest or lack of fire is really the example of what their problem is right now. It just doesn't seem like this team has guys that when they get smacked in the face, they just take it and move on with everything, which, is probably how I would handle things in real life. But if I go out and I start with a double bogey on number 1 at Cary Park, my game plan on number 2 is I'm making eagle here. I'm getting on the green in 2, and I'm getting those 2 shots back. It's not, well, I guess this round's going to be dog crap. I play the next however many holes thing, and then I'm still going to get this thing back on the rails. Now, when I'm walking off of 9 green and getting ready to go in and get my Gatorade and Snickers, I'm like, oh, well, crap. I just, I went in 42. I don't think that I'm going to get this thing back on track, but I'm still convincing myself that I am, even though I've had very few rounds like that in my life. So that's kind of the thing that you're looking at here for K-State is they don't have that. Like, it's okay if that's your human personality to be like, well, I'm not really that type of person. Okay, we've talked about that with Avery Johnson. I don't think he is that kind of fiery person. But when you're competitive and on the sports side of it, you do need that. And this team doesn't seem to have it at this point in time. And that's just not something that I think that with this big of a group, you're going to be able to galvanize it and extract it out of them. Maybe somebody like Jerome Tang would have that chance to do because you're working with a smaller group and 1 or 2 players can be a whole lot more infectious. But in football, it's a massive roster and you're just totally split up on sides of the ball. The offense does what the offense does and the defense does what the defense does, and nobody's going to be able to kind of infiltrate that.
Yeah, I think that was the sound of a very pissed off coach that probably has watched over and over the last 4 weeks of the season and just kind of reliving the moments where, his team gets hit in the face and nobody really does anything about it. I thought it was kind of telling too that he brought up that the coaching staff also, has just kind of taken it. So I would assume, based on what you hear, because the takeaways that I had from the press conference, the 2 words that he kept saying was like fire and energy. If K-State doesn't come out with fire or energy after how much he brought it up in the press conference and how much it sounds like it's been brought up over the last however many days post the Arizona game, that's where I think the real problem shows its head.
Well, and, I question the competitiveness of this team because that's really what this boils down to is how competitive are you? And I think a lot of competitors would look at how they played. I could understand how the North Dakota game could happen after they played Iowa State. You're upset. You think you came up just short. Okay, now you're coming home for a gimme game, and okay. This is a layup for us, and you're kind of sleepwalking through it. And then, as we know, they find themselves late in that game down. The response should have been the next week against Army to, okay, we can't let this happen again. And what do? They let it happen again, and they let it get even worse because they lost the game. And that's concerning. So then you think, well, Arizona might be kind of that final stand, and it didn't matter. They looked terrible against Arizona. That was the worst game they've played all season, was against Arizona. And the offense, they don't even really get any credit from me in that game, because what they did there, they had a busted play that they took 75 yards for one of their touchdowns, and they only scored another touchdown in the game because Arizona's punter dropped the ball, and you had a guy on special teams make a heck of a play, a guy that looks like he gave a crap and wants to be out there and try to win the game.
Two guys, really. Marion Fortenberry, too.
Yeah. Guys that the only opportunities they had to impact the game on Friday night in Tucson took it and ran with it. Nobody else did it. It was just a very passive performance. And I think anybody that's a legitimate competitor that has that fire in them that they're looking for wouldn't have gone out and looked that way against Army, and wouldn't have gone out and looked that way against Arizona. And they did. And that's why, as much as I would like to think that this thing could get turned around, because it's not going to be a whole lot more fun talking K-State football this season if they don't even win these games like what they have against UCF coming back. I just really doubt it, because we would have already seen it at this point. It's kind of like K-State basketball last year, where we kept talking and talking. It's like, we would have already seen it at this point. And they went on that little run where they won 6 games in a row. They had 2 games that they got up for, I think, out of respect for their head coach. They weren't going to, completely turn their back on him, which was the Iowa State game in Hilton, which I would argue was probably the most important game of the season for Jerome Tang. And then, and I'm not saying that he viewed it that way, but I think there's a world in which the players could galvanize themselves and say, we got to come together and do this for coach. We haven't necessarily pulled our weight, but he's about to get hell walking into that building from all those psychotic fans, psychotic with a CY. And then the home game against Kansas, that was your fan service for the season. The other games, you played some bad teams in there, and momentum probably helped a little bit. And then the Arizona game, K-State shot the ball like crap in that game. Arizona just somehow had an equally or worse performance, and you ended up getting it. I'm not saying that it was just total luck, but then that team didn't build off of that 6-game stretch. They let it fall apart, and that's why I say they didn't show, oh, we can get this thing back on, because they would have done it earlier. They would have responded better after losing that game at TCU, and they wouldn't have looked like crap against Oklahoma State. They would have bounced back. I just don't see it for this team.
You also are who you are at this point, and the way that they're still making the same mistakes over and over and over. I can already chalk up that there's probably going to be a special teams mistake of some kind on Saturday.
Well, they've done it 4 straight games. They've turned the ball over 4 times in a row on special teams.
So there's no reason to think that that's going to get fixed, and there's probably going to be a dumb penalty at some point in the game that either takes away a big play by the offense or a big play by the defense, because they've done that a lot in the last 9 games as well.
So the other thing that I want to play from Chris Klieman is something that I'll ask you if you're concerned by this. I'll let it play, and then we'll discuss it. But he's mentioned this a couple of times this year, which is, to me, just a little bit more some insight into he doesn't like what he has on his plate right now to try and get the job done.
Well, it sucks. I mean, let's be honest. We all know it does. And we've got to dig ourselves out of it. And there's no reason for me to point fingers. There's no reason for me to, I can get frustrated, but, there's not a free agency period right now, or there's not a free agency period with coaches. I mean, it is what it is. We've got to figure this out. There's good football teams out there, and we've got a bunch of them that we're going to play, including this week. And always in this league, you're going to be in dogfights, and it's going to be a lot of one-score games. And so we got to dig deep and find a way to win these one-score games. The optimism would say, hey, we've been within a score of every loss we have. You know, that's easy to say, but we're not playing well enough to win those games. We haven't earned those wins. You know, we've earned the loss because we haven't played well enough. We lose by 3 points, 6 points, whatever it may be. We gotta do some things and find some things within to win those games and earn those wins. And that's where we're all, meaning fans, players, coaches, all frustrated because we all feel we're better than what we're showing. But that does you better act upon it. You know, words are one thing. You gotta act upon it. You gotta go whip that guy across from you one-on-one, and that's what we're not doing right now.
So the thing that has me concerned that he's brought it up a few times this year already, they've only played 4 games, is he's used that term that we're not going to be able to go out and get any free agents to help this team, which whether he means it this way or not, it comes across to me, you don't like what you've got in-house, but hey, we're stuck with it. We can't change it. We've got to try to fight through it. That being anybody that's there or the guys that are doing the right things. He also, within that, not only didn't, it was not just free agency for players, he also mentioned free agency for coaches, which would also be a little concerning to me. And then he also talked about the coaches haven't responded to getting hit in the mouth. That's a massive problem. If the adults in the room that have done this for millions of dollars in their career can't handle a little adversity because you failed on this drive or you failed on this play, and so now you're wilting, that's a concern to me. And he's then saying we have no reason to point fingers. Well, I think if you get past the point of pointing fingers, you're kind of just like, I don't know what we can do here. And we have to figure, you're just hoping at this point that it all falls into place. And I said this after the Army game with the way that he spoke in the press conference was it came across in a tone that he can't be hard on this team and he can't get into them like a coach wants to or needs to, like he was able to with the 2022 team, with how they took the kid gloves off and gave it straight to Adrian Martinez. And he responded and manned up and played great football until an injury knocked him out. And when he, at halftime of the Texas Tech game that year, used the term, we have to nut up. This team couldn't handle that. This team couldn't handle Chris Klieman telling them that they need to be tougher, I think. I think that they'd turn around and cry. Like, he's just trying to not upset the apple cart. So by some miracle, things fall into place and you get lucky that you get the team you thought that you had, but you don't have the personalities for it. And it's the same situation that Jerome Tang and the basketball program found themselves in last season, where that what can you do when not much is going to get these guys to respond? You're just hoping that on their own accord, they finally have the light click on and they give you what they're supposed to be. And we saw it for a little bit with Doug McDaniel with and nothing else is working. Let's just give him what he wants and see what happens. And it worked for a little bit. You know, Coleman Hawkins worked for a little bit last year, but it was because you just kind of got lucky and the pieces, they magically fit already. And the pieces aren't fitting right now for K-State, and they're just hoping that they get lucky, and for some reason they do for a little bit. Similar in some ways to how Oklahoma State managed the 2023 season. I thought that team was terrible. Come to find out, they were terrible. They just somehow got really lucky that the pieces fit long enough for them to not be atrocious, and they made it all the way to the Big 12 title game. The difference on that team would be, though, they were rotating quarterbacks. They were rotating running backs. They had no idea what they were supposed to be. Then they kind of found something that worked. They rode the momentum long enough before the magic wore off, and now we know where it's gone. All those players were terrible last year, and their coach just got fired today. So
this is where, and that specific quote is why I brought it up on the recruiting show, where this offseason is going to be very interesting, because that kind of sounded like a coach that is ready to make some changes, but knows that he can't. And I mean, it all starts with him, and it starts at the top, because you can't bring in guys that if they can't flip this switch that you need them to, or play hard, like that falls on you. And it also falls on you in terms of the coaching staff and how that kind of plays out as well. But it just, that sounded like a guy that knows that he needs to make some moves, but knows that he probably can't do it right now.
Yeah, or you're the deeper that it goes in this season, maybe it goes even further than just realizing you need to make a bunch of changes. It's I like, how did it get to this point for Chris Klieman? And that's kind of what I tried getting at after like the game in Tucson, and he didn't take it fully in that direction. But like, he's got to be sitting around wondering, I thought we put together a good football team. Everybody did. The media thought he put together a good football team. The league coaches thought he put together a good football team, and they're sitting here 1-3. And if it wasn't for Oklahoma State and West Virginia looking like complete trash, you would be the worst team in this league. In a normal year, K-State is the worst team in the Big 12 right now. But by no means do they have the talent that they should be in that position. So he has to be thinking to himself, how did this happen? And then that's when you start to go, can I keep doing this? Like, am I going to be able to get this right next year? Like, where did we go wrong? Because I think so much has to go wrong with the construction of a roster for things to deteriorate this quickly, when I don't think there was a significant talent drop off from last year's team to this one. And so when you start second guessing it, you've been in it as long as Chris Klieman, all these changes are happening. You're seeing other guys that have been some of the most consistent and respected dudes in their conferences, like Mike Gundy and Dabo Swinney, also struggling right now, and you're trying to figure out how and why. Then you also probably start to question like your outlook and your future on it, and do you still need it? Because this isn't just a 1-3 start this year; it's a 1-3 November last year on top of it. K-State's 2-6 in their last 8 regular season games. That just isn't going to cut it, and that's why, like, I see some people. There's a lot of K-State and Oklahoma State fans talking back and forth on Twitter right now, just because I think everybody's, it's a sad day for Mike Gundy to be gone. He's been a stalwart of Big 12 sports for so long. And like, he's on the Mount Rushmore of Big 12 personalities since this league formed. And for him to be gone, like, I think a lot of people are sad about and discussing.
He's on the Mount Rushmore of best Big 12 football coaches since the league was formed.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's him, Bill Snyder, Bob Stoops, and Mac Brown, maybe?
Mac Brown.
I hate to say it, like, is Matt Campbell encroaching on that territory?
Lincoln Riley would be up there.
Nah, I don't give Lincoln Riley any credit.
He won the Big 12 so many times that he was there, though.
Yeah, but they also did the same thing with Bob Stoops, and they would have kept doing it if Stoops had stuck around too. He gets no credit from me.
But yeah, I think that Matt Campbell, though, needs to win the Big 12 to be the fourth.
Well, that's an interesting topic of conversation. Let's tuck that one away. We might need that in a few weeks when the season's gone to total crap. But like, people are talking about, Klieman and all that, and Oklahoma State fans are like, what? Like, this would only be one bad season. This isn't like Gundy, who, 3 of the 4 last couple of years have gone to crap. That's where the point is being missed, that like last year falling as hard as it did at the end, that has to be grouped into this conversation. Last year wasn't just a regular old 9-4 season. And I get it. Like, if you get to the point where 9-4 seasons are driving you mad and you're taking those for granted in college football, you're probably in a bad place, but you need to have a little bit of nuance with your outlook on things. And I think you group that into this, and that's where K-State sits right now. But, there's so much focus on the players and the problems there. Yesterday's the first time that I really started going, this is concerning. Like, I thought maybe there needed to be more coaching turnover. We know guys just get stuck in places for too long, and it's good to have a reset, get some fresh blood in. The fact that Chris Klieman like kind of put a little bit more of it on his coaches and grouped them into the same problems that the players are having, that's concerning. And yeah, you can't change that in the middle of the year. And we also know that Chris Klieman has been pretty hard pressed on actually like cleaning out guys that he's had on staff for a long time. He's only done it one time. He got Courtney Messingham out of there for them to win a Big 12 title. And like, how motivated is he going to be to do that when right now it feels like this team is a mile away from Big 12 title contention?
And everybody else is left on their own volition outside of Jason Ray. So like, that is kind of the other fascinating dynamic with all of this. What's your third clip from yesterday?
Just to give the people what they want to hear in his discussion about what he needs to see Avery do a little bit better?
I think all of the above. Sometimes when it's breaking down, just take off and get what you can get, or maybe just the progression side of where he wants to read, where Coach Wells wants him to start his eyes based on the coverage, and maybe give him a few more easy looks, some what we call layups in that respect. We can't drop balls too. I mean, we've had a lot of 2nd and 10s or 3rd and 10s because we drop a 4-yard stick route or a 5-yard out route that, we've been really poor on 3rd down on offense, and all that is relative when you're 3rd and 9 plus, 3rd and 10 plus, and we should be 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4.
So I threw that in there because I thought people would be interested, and he understands, like, hey, look, there are things that Avery needs to do better. I think this is where it gets lost on some fans. And was kind of the point of what I wrote about after the Arizona game, where even though this era feels like it's over and it's failed and it's been a disaster, and Avery Johnson is going to be the poster child for that, I don't think that a lot of this is totally on him. Like, he could have played better during these stretches, but what is he to do right now? Well, Chris Klieman's addressed yesterday. The coaches have to be better, and it seemed like Matt Wells was one of them, especially when you're talking about, well, maybe we need to do some more layups. We need to not be 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9. We need to be 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. We know the offensive line's been terrible. We know that they can't run the ball to save their life right now. And then he was without, one of his 3 legit receivers on Friday in Tucson. So he needs to run the ball better when it's there. When the scramble opportunities come, he needs to take them and showcase that ability.
Which is what everybody has said, and even like Chris Klieman has said this before yesterday even.
Yeah.
Like that's not like news.
But I think like that's the one thing that he can do to actually help this team right now. And after so long, that's not going to help you over the course of an entire game, or certainly for an extended period of games. You just need to have that a couple times and then hope that you have enough extra to kind of get you over the hump elsewhere. But that's why, like, this thing going to crap isn't on Avery. It just, he has to wear it because he's the quarterback, the high profile quarterback that was supposed to be playing to win a Big 12 title this year for K-State. And instead he's hanging out in the bottom, and it doesn't look good. But yeah, those were the 3 things from Chris Klieman that I wanted to discuss and throw out there for everybody. So we'll do the preview show with DY tomorrow. You'll have another 2-day show type of deal because of my schedule this week. So we'll have a regular show with Drew and I, and then on Thursday you'll get to hear the preview show with DY. But do you think K-State beats UCF this weekend?
Probably not, based on what we have seen over the last 9 games for K-State. Until they look like they care and play hard, it's hard for me to pick them against anybody with a pulse.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk basketball. Maybe things a little bit more exciting or better on that front right now. Jerome Tang spoke yesterday, and I want to start with what I think is probably the most notable thing that came out of yesterday. We kind of hit on it last week, that some of his comments that he had been making when going around and doing a little bit of a media circuit hinted at, the differences between last year and like where Coleman Hawkins or guys like that might have poisoned the water hole a little bit and where they got things wrong. Jerome Tang discussed yesterday 2 guys in particular, Haggerty and Bashir.
Their approach, and I think I'm going to say that about most of the guys, if not all of them. They have a very mature approach to the game. They show up early, they work hard, they come back late. They have a real professional approach. They know how to talk to people, whether it's their teammates, whether they need encouragement at times or they need somebody to get on them at times. They take coaching well, and they both bring really great energy to practice. And particularly Abdi's got a gift for leadership, and just love the energy that he brings.
So that is, I think, notable given the problems that you had with your two most relied upon and noted transfers from last season, Doug McDaniel and Coleman Hawkins, that now you're in a position where you're looking at a team and you go, oh, okay. Abdi Bashir seems to be accepting of this a little bit more, which I think people were maybe a little bit you could be concerned about that given the style that he had to play at Monmouth last year, where it was basically, hey, we're going to give you the ball and you can go out there and just jack it around and, try to score 30 points a game for us and let's hope it works. And so you could wonder if a guy like that could handle adjusting into a situation where he needs solid coaching and everything. He's handling PJ Haggerty, same type of deal. You had to go out, be the guy, drop 20 plus points a game at Memphis. You're the All-American. You are the thing that is bringing this team together that makes them have the possibility of being a good team and getting back to the NCAA tournament. You're coming from Penny Hardaway's program where I don't think you're probably getting a lot of great coaching in that circumstance. And they come in and Jerome Tang thinks they have the right attitude and the right, ability to accept the coaching. And I don't think that's lip service from Jerome Tang. I think last year in particular, he probably had to try to, we talked about tricking ourselves earlier with the football situation right now. He probably had to try to trick himself and the fans into thinking that this wasn't going to be a complete failure. Because, as much as there were issues for Tang and his staff last year, they've been around this thing long enough that they would know pretty early on if this thing's not going to work. And I think they probably had a good idea it wasn't going to come together with what they have because of some of the personalities. But the fact that the two guys that are your big boy scorers seem to have the right personality, it's a good tone to set for the team, and it's a step in the right direction that makes me think this team will be good this year.
Yeah, that was maybe the single most important piece of Jerome Tang's press conference yesterday, I think, was him just speaking about Bashir and Haggerty and hearing them really buying in, because, we didn't see that at all last year for a lot of the players on the team. Always good to hear it. Like you said, it didn't sound like lip service or him really making it up. It sounded very genuine. And he's been very honest in the little speaking with the media that he's done, kind of about how everything went last year, because he keeps comparing the two, and you keep hearing a change in his voice when he talks about last year compared to this year. So I think that he's a lot more excited. He talked again a few times yesterday about how last year wasn't really the best out of Jerome Tang. So he's really taking ownership with that as well. So I think that we're seeing a very positive basketball program. And I think that in the game of basketball, because the game fluctuates so much, and that's what makes the tournament so fun, so it makes the regular season so fun, is that one night somebody can look like they're world beaters and then turn around and lose to like Stephen F. Austin or like somebody worse than that. So with that, I think that if you have a really tight-knit group, that can get you like one or two wins that you probably wouldn't get if your team wasn't as close, because you're going to have a game where you look like crap, and it's going to be, okay, we got to gut this one out and try and survive it and just move on to the next. So to hear that those guys are really bought in, really good thing. I am becoming increasingly more an Abdi Bashir guy. I think he might end second on the team in scoring.
Okay, that's exciting to hear. Jerome Tang also talked about adjustments that he himself had to make, referencing last year and some of the way that he failed last season.
Pretty transparent with the fact that I wasn't the best version of myself last year, and part of that is because I was felt like we were paying players and expected them to be professionals when they were still 18 to 23-year-olds. And so my approach, expectation without grace leads to disappointment and frustration. And I've spent a lot of last year with expectations, but I didn't apply the grace that needed to be applied. And so I was frustrated and disappointed a lot. And it reflected in how I taught the guys, how I cared for the guys, and just my response to certain things, and it stopped me from being the best version of myself. And so this year, I'm going to do a better job.
And that right there should maybe be the most encouraging thing you can hear long-term for this team, because we talked about it during last season and then certainly when it ended and you needed to build this team again. I've said numerous times over the last year plus, the NIL is just there as another tool in recruiting. It helps teams and locations look more attractive that normally wouldn't have been, or can level the playing surface. But as we have started to see, and some teams had to find out the hard way, and K-State was one of them that was an example for everybody in the country, that you can't just go out and pay the best players and hope that it all works out. Like, you can debate just how talented Coleman Hawkins actually was and if he could have handled actually being a number one. Here's the thing. He never gave himself or K-State the true opportunity for that growth to happen, for him to take that step forward, because he's a pretty immature guy. I think he played college basketball for the wrong reasons last year. Not totally his fault. I think people in his circle probably led him down the wrong path, and K-State ended up being the victim of his poor actions last season.
Doug McDaniel, same exact thing.
Doug McDaniel, same type of thing. Like, you had guys that, like, this is where we look back on it, and there are always guys that come into the program and only have a year or two, and you go, man, I feel bad. I wish that guy got another year with a good group. Like, I think back, some people might laugh, whatever, but like, I feel bad that Justin Edwards transferred, had a red shirt on the team that made the tournament, and then the 2 years he got to play were dog crap reset years. Like, that's a dude that I wish would have been able to at least have been on that first four team and had an extra year to play. Max Jones is a guy that last year, I think you'd look like, I feel bad that he had to experience his only season of power conference basketball on last year's team. That's a player that is worthy of being on this year's team. But you use NIL as a tool to help you recruit, but you don't turn your back on the things that were important in recruiting 15 years ago. You still have to get the right guys in your program and guys that can buy into it. You use the NIL to either entice those right type of guys to come in, or you use the NIL to retain them. So guys on this year's team that you go, oh, we want to keep you, we want you to stick around, you can do that then. And I've discussed it, but we saw year one, Jerome Tang had the right personalities, had the right attitudes on that team. They came together. They did it. They were great. The unfortunate thing is that the three most important players on that team didn't have eligibility to come back the next season, because if that was an opportunity, I guarantee you that they're able to bring Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson and Desi Sills back the very next year, and they would have made the NCAA tournament, and they would have been good. The year after that, I think they still, for the most part, had the right personalities on the team. They got dinged with two hard things. Naquan Tomlin couldn't figure his crap out. And ultimately, again, you can debate how that decision played out, but he crafted that outcome for himself. He didn't get to play. Okay. Jerome Tang thought he was going to have that kind of player on his team. Didn't have him. They also lost the guy that was going to be probably the second most minutes as a ball handler on their team before they even played a game that year because of injury. Like, that team came together and like, they had their issues, but they had enough on that team. And I think some of the guys that maybe struggled at points, they were able to pull it together a little bit more. It wasn't as disastrous as last season. Last year, we just know now that Coleman Hawkins and Doug McDaniel were disastrous personalities for this basketball team and this program. And I think Jerome Tang has learned, and it may be a hard thing. We're going to have to give some grace on it. Media, fans, whatever, that teams might have sharper down years or not as high of ceilings as you would want in this era. But K-State just learned it firsthand. You'd rather put up with that. You would rather put up with a year of Tyler Perry having to try and do everything in his might to get you over the hump and you end up in the NIT than last year's team where the ceiling looked like it was being one of the best teams in the Big 12, or by the middle of the year, you hate all the guys on the team and they're not playing well. And like, you have to be able to value the person still. And Jerome Tang, I think, learned, hey, we have to put more time into finding this. And I think he also thought we need to have more of the right guys on staff because he made staff changes too. Like here we are talking about, the changes that were made for Chris Klieman, where he's really only made one on his own accord. Jerome Tang, the Yorick Maligi thing, like he leaves, but like I don't think that was necessarily a like, oh shoot, we lost him type of deal. Like Jerome Tang went out of his comfort zone, and I know they're guys that he knows, but he's bringing two guys in that I think are getting a lot of leeway to help with this team this year. And it may be a little bit of an ego hit to him, but I don't think it matters because he is committed to winning. And like he made adjustments this year, and I think they're going to pay dividends. And it shows growth, and it shows that there might be light at the end of the tunnel long term. Like I've said throughout the summer, I think short term, this team's going to be good this year. They'll be in the NCAA tournament. I was concerned about the long term of the program under Jerome Tang. I'm still not I'm not going to fully buy into it now because that would be dumb of me to do and commit to it. But it shows that they're on the right path and that they can get this thing turned around, and that we could be a year or two away from people pushing the buyout talk behind them on Jerome Tang and his coaching staff.
Yeah, growth as a person, growth as a coach, and really learning from your mistakes, extremely, extremely important. And hearing him really take ownership for that is a good thing to hear. It really, again, that you're trying to talk about like the role reversals of the two. Chris Klieman was always really good at adapting and kind of adjusting and learning on the fly. We're seeing it a little bit now from Jerome Tang and how he's handling, adjusting it, and learning stuff on the fly. Another guy that like I thought about was like David Gasson got to be on the Elite Eight team.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that like shouldn't have had to go through the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah. He didn't earn that or deserve that last season.
Like that's a guy that like, and especially like knowing what K-State is like missing on this roster. Like David Gasson would be, if they had David Gasson, I would be extremely, extremely high on what K-State would have. But now it's like there's just don't really know what's going to go on at the 5 spot. But yeah, it was very good to hear him really take ownership of a lot of last season. Like he's doing this also, for the most part, pretty unprompted about how, and open about how last year went. And he's being a lot more open and honest and upfront about it than I think anybody really expected, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and to some extent, like more than he needs to be. Like we've seen in the past, like it's not a full criticism of him, because like I understand that this is how coaches are, and we would be holding Jerome Tang to an unfair standard for him to be different than some of these guys. But like he has, I think, withheld some of this before and not necessarily dodged it, but tried to sidestep it as much as he can without like fully addressing what needs to be addressed or saying some of these things. He's being very transparent this year in a negative way. Like it's easy for coaches, and all of them do it, to be transparent when things are positive or going at least well enough. But he's in a stage right now where like, things are bad. And this is a good example to a lot of people out there when their back is up against the wall. Like this is what people want to see when things are going poorly. They want you to be able to pull the curtain back. And like Jerome Tang is giving you legit accountability. And I think, to what you were saying, like you can tell it's legit because of the tone change that he has when he compares this year's team to last year's team. And that he's not avoiding addressing things from last year necessarily and making those comparisons. And I think, if the personality and the guys on last year's team had been different, and it didn't go poorly for the reasons it did, I think he'd stick up for those guys. I don't think I'm trying to, like, the best example would probably be Bruce. Probably if he was trying to compare his 2019 team to the team that he had his last season, he's probably not going to say anything bad about that last team that he had, like he's probably going to, be, now the COVID year team and like the team before that, maybe you're saying something a little bit different, but that's just one of those where I I take it as genuine from Jerome Tang right now. Last thing that I'll play for everybody is he had some comments on Nate Johnson, who I think will be a pretty important piece of this team. And Jerome Tang thinks that they can get more out of him. They're just working to do it.
Nate's holding back on us. Like he's a talent, man. Like you don't win MVP of a league and defensive player of the league and not be a really good player on the same one. And sometimes he coasts when he should like dominate. Our goal as a staff is to be able to draw out of him where he like dominates like the whole time he's on the floor in practice. And such a nice young man, and he likes his teammates. His teammates like him. That sometimes like I need him to be mean and nasty on purpose. And so that's a growth that has to take place. But he's a joy to be around and a pleasure to coach.
That's another thing that I think is welcomed for this team, is that when Jerome Tang says that, he doesn't mean it in a negative way about Nate Johnson. It comes across to me as meaning it more in how Bruce Weber talked about Dean Wade for a lot of his career, was like, you kind of have to understand just how good you can be and like lean into it more. Like I go back to the Oklahoma State game in Stillwater in 2019, and Dean Wade, I don't think missed a shot in that game, had 18 points or whatever. And somebody asked Bruce Weber about it, and Bruce's response was, I wish he had missed one because it means he would have shot more. If you're shooting the ball like that, you need to take more shots. And we always know he talked about he needs to become a better rebounder. He needs to become a better defender. Like he needs to be more aggressive. Well, now you look at the guy in the NBA, and that has been unlocked. Like he's become a legitimate rotation piece for a team that was just the number one seed in the Eastern Conference last year. And he gets to play because he's, he can help you out on the offensive end, but his defense is respected in the NBA. And I view that as what they're saying with Nate Johnson here is obviously Haggerty and Bashir are going to be your scorers. They're going to be huge for you this year. But Nate Johnson, we think, is going to be good for this team. I think Jerome Tang is saying we think he can be better than what the expectation should be for a guy transferring from the MAC to the Big 12. He just has to buy into it too.
And that's what's exciting, is that it sounds like it's not that Nate Johnson isn't very good. It's that they think that he can be even better, like even be like pushing for all conference. So I'm really excited about hearing all that about Nate Johnson. And really the whole Jerome Tang press conference was very refreshing. And like I said earlier, it's just that breath of fresh air of like, they was so transparent when it didn't need to be about like points from last year, that you get a lot of sense that he really enjoys being around this team, and this team really enjoys being around each other. And you never got that since last year.
It felt real from Jerome Tang yesterday. And there were times, even when it was good, that it didn't always feel like it was 100% real. Yesterday, even as they haven't done anything good yet to truly build it back and get people back in, it's a real thing. Mike Gundy got fired today, Drew. Thoughts on losing a Big 12 legend?
It's sad in the sense that it's over and it happened so abruptly. Like, nobody's really surprised that he's gone, but the timing, I think, is what surprised everybody. Doing it after he already did his weekly press conference, I think, is kind of lame of Oklahoma State as well. How they handled it, I don't think was very good, because this season for Oklahoma State's like a wash anyway.
Yeah. I look, he was going to be gone this year. They needed a fresh start there, but the way they did it is crap. And I know that it's not the most popular time to say something nice about Gene Taylor and how football and everything's worked out. It just goes to show, and we knew it at the time, K-State's very fortunate the way that Gene Taylor handled the end of Bill Snyder, because you could have found yourself in a similar situation, or where you felt like it was done in poor taste, and it wasn't. They let it breathe a little bit after the season ended, maybe a little bit longer than some of us would have wanted, but they got it done in a mostly amicable way. Bill Snyder was back in the stadium the very next year watching games, and Chris Klieman at the time was the right hire, has been very good for K-State. Like, it all worked out. I don't think anybody wins in the way that Oklahoma State handled this situation. I know that there was a report out of a radio station in Oklahoma City that allegedly he was given the option to resign and finish out the rest of the year. I think that's been disproved. At least I think Chad Weiberg, the AD, has come out and said that wasn't on the table. If that wasn't on the table, to just give him the opportunity to say, hey, this is going to be my final year, and then they let you coach it out. I think that's a failure by Oklahoma State. I get wanting to make the message clear we're looking for a new head coach right now, but to not let Mike Gundy finish the season, you're going to be bad regardless now this year. Why are you kicking him to the curb? He didn't deserve that. I think it's in poor taste by Oklahoma State, and it's a sad day for the Big 12 to lose a guy that, love or hate his stance on things, you certainly love the way that he goes about it and how much of an entertainer, in addition to a great football coach, he's been for a school like Oklahoma State the last 20 years.
They could have just announced it like right before they played K-State. That was his last home game. Like that would have been.
I don't even have a problem like right now if you do it and you say, hey, we've come to the decision, like this is it. He's going to get to coach out the rest of the year. Go for it. Like plenty of coaches way worse than Gundy have done it. KU let David Beatty do it. And what did he do? He went out and just gifted the game to K-State in 2018. I listened to 2 hours of Oklahoma City sports talk today just to kind of get my finger on the pulse of the situation. Coach firings get me jazzed up. And I think it's Oklahoma State's at home this weekend. And I think they have like a significant weekend of some kind that a guy that was a teammate with Mike Gundy is going into like their Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor or something. And Gundy was that guy's quarterback, and he's not going to get to be there because, I doubt Mike Gundy shows up after getting fired on a Tuesday after O State made him go and do his press conference yesterday and go do his coach's show yesterday. So there you go. Sad day for the Big 12 and Mike Gundy, but it might give K-State in the direction of their football program something to think about because it's tough for things to get back on track. And we'll just see what the direction looks like for K-State moving forward. All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for listening to the KSO show. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. We are back again tomorrow. Drew doesn't know it, but we're doing a recruiting update tomorrow. And then Thursday, we will have your preview show for K-State and UCF with myself and DY. Nothing on Friday because I'll be busy moving. And then Saturday, everything like normal for a game day and KSO post-game live after the Cats and Knights do battle at 11 a.m. So we're out of here. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online.